Welcome back to Palestine Bookshelf. I'm Stephen Heiner, and today we're going to be talking about A Genocide Foretold by Chris Hedges. The cover art for this book was put together by an artist for Médecins Sans Frontières, Doctors Without Borders, in order to benefit Gaza. A lot of times on Palestine Bookshelf, we're looking at events that happened years and years ago, 1917, 1948, 1967. I think sometimes we fail to realize we're living through history now, and books like Chris's, which were published in 2025, are giving us up-to-the-date reflections, information. So let's hear from Chris. Israel has destroyed hundreds of clinics, hospitals, telecommunication centers, nearly all municipal and government buildings, commercial, industrial, and agricultural buildings, roads, homes, residential buildings, and refugee camps in Gaza. The bombing of the Al-Taj Tower in Gaza City on October the 25th, 2023 alone killed 101 people, including 44 children and 37 women, and injured hundreds. Israel has gutted all of Gaza's universities, along with schools and libraries. Archaeological and heritage sites, including as many as 1,000 mosques, churches, and Gaza's central archives, which held 150 years of historical records and documents, are in ruins. Israel is estimated to have dropped over 83,000 tons of explosives, more than all the bombs dropped on Dresden, Hamburg, and London during World War II combined on Gaza between October the 7th, 2023 and September 22nd, 2024. Many targets are selected by artificial intelligence. Nearly all of Gaza's 2.3 million residents are homeless. Over 180 women give birth daily with little to no medical care. They are 3 times more likely to suffer miscarriages, and if they carry their baby to term, 3 times more likely to die. Over 90% of the Palestinians in Gaza suffer from severe food insecurity, with people eating animal feed and grass. Children are dying of starvation, and hepatitis cases have climbed to over 40,000. In August 2024, polio was reported in Gaza. 70% of recorded deaths have consistently been women and children, writes Francesca Albanese, the United Nations Special Rapporteur on the situation of human rights in the Palestinian territories, in her report issued on March 25, 2024. Israel failed to prove that the remaining 30%, that is, adult males, were active Hamas combatants, a necessary condition for them to be lawfully targeted. By early December, Israel's security advisors claimed the killing of 7,000 terrorists in a stage of the campaign when less than 5,000 adult males in total had been identified among the casualties, thus implying that all adult males killed were terrorists. In a report Albanese released on October the 28th, 2024, she writes, "The disturbing frequency and callousness of the killing of people known to be civilians are emblematic of the systematic nature of a destructive intent. 6-year-old Hind Rajab killed with 355 bullets after pleading for help for hours. The fatal mauling by dogs of Muhammad Bar, who had Down syndrome. The execution of Atta Ibrahim al-Muqaid, an older deaf man, in his home, later bragged about by his killer and other soldiers on social media. The premature babies deliberately left to die a slow death and decompose in the intensive care unit at Al-Nasser Hospital. The elderly man, Bashir Haji, killed en route to southern Gaza after appearing in a propaganda photograph of a safe corridor. Abu al-Ola, the handcuffed hostage, shot by a sniper after being sent into Nasser Hospital with evacuation orders." We talked about that story and how he died inside of his mother. When the dust settles on Gaza, the true extent of the horror experienced by Palestinians will become known. I don't mean to minimize the horror of the siege of Sarajevo, and Chris was in Sarajevo covering that war, which gives me nightmares nearly 3 decades later. But what we suffered, 300 to 400 shells a day, 4 to 5 dead a day, and 24 wounded a day, is a tiny fraction of the wholesale death and destruction in Gaza. The Israeli siege of Gaza more resembles the Wehrmacht's assault on Stalingrad, where over 90% of the city's buildings were destroyed, than Sarajevo. The genocide says something not only about Israel, but about us, about Western civilization, about who we are as a people, where we came from, and what defines us. It says that all our vaunted morality and respect for human rights is a lie. It says that people of color, especially when they are poor and vulnerable, do not count. It says their hopes, dreams, dignity, and aspirations for freedom are worthless. It says we will ensure global domination through racialized violence. This lie, that Western civilization is predicated on values, such as respect for human rights and the rule of law, is one the Palestinians and all those in the global south, as well as Native and Black and Brown Americans, have known for centuries. All governments lie, as I.F. Stone points out, including Israel and Hamas, but Israel engages in the kinds of jaw-dropping lies that characterize despotic and totalitarian regimes. It does not deform the truth, it inverts it. It routinely paints a picture for the outside world that is diametrically opposed to reality. All of us who covered the occupied territories dutifully inserted these lies into our stories, required under the rules of American journalism, although we knew they were untrue. If you are, I don't want to say enjoying this content, but if you are appreciating this content, consider hitting like, subscribe, sharing this with people who are also interested in up-to-the-date information and reflections on what has been happening in Gaza. I was in Gaza when attack jets struck overcrowded hovels in Gaza City. I saw the corpses of the victims, including children. This became a surgical strike on a bomb-making factory. I have watched Israel demolish homes and entire apartment blocks to create wide buffer zones between the Palestinians and the Israeli troops that ring Gaza. Israel has now expanded its buffer zone along the Gaza perimeter to 16% of the territory. I have interviewed the destitute and homeless families, some camped out in crude shelters erected in the rubble. The destruction becomes the demolition of the homes of terrorists. I have stood in the remains of schools, as well as medical clinics and mosques. I have heard Israel claim that errant rockets or mortar fire from the Palestinians caused these and other deaths, or that the locations were being used as armed depots or launching sites. Israel was founded on lies. The lie that Palestinian land was largely unoccupied. The lie that Palestinians fled their homes and villages during the ethnic cleansing by Zionist militias in 1948 because they were told to do so by Arab leaders. The lie that it was Arab armies that started the 1948 war that saw Israel seize 78% of historic Palestine. The lie that Israel faced annihilation in 1967, forcing it to invade and occupy the remaining 22% of Palestine, as well as land belonging to Egypt and Syria. Israel is sustained by lies. The lie that Israel wants a just and equitable peace and will support a Palestinian state. The lie that Israel is the only democracy in the Middle East. The lie that Israel is an outpost of Western civilization in a sea of barbarism. The lie that Israel respects the rule of law and human rights. The only significant resistance to the genocide has been provided by Yemen's Red Sea blockade. Yemen, which was under siege for 8 years by Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, France, the United Kingdom, and the United States, suffered over 400,000 deaths from starvation, lack of health care, infectious diseases, and the deliberate bombing of schools, hospitals, infrastructure, residential areas, markets, funerals, and weddings. Since at least 2017, multiple UN agencies have described Yemen as experiencing the largest humanitarian crisis in the world. They know all too well what the Palestinians are enduring. And I want to pay tribute to the Yemenis for being the people to stand up to the Israelis, really being among the few. The lone, as far as countries go, you have non-state actors like Hezbollah. But as far as a state actor, Yemen has shown the hypocrisy of the Western world for what it is. Naftali Bennett, Israel's former prime minister, in an interview on Sky News said, "We're fighting Nazis." In other words, absolute evil. Not to be outdone, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu described Hamas in a press conference with the German Chancellor Olaf Scholz as the new Nazis. Think about that. A people imprisoned in the world's largest concentration camp for 17 years, denied food, water, fuel, and medicine, lacking an army, air force, navy, mechanized units, artillery, command and control, or missile batteries, is being butchered and starved by one of the most advanced militaries on the planet, and they are the Nazis? You read it, you have to laugh, but Chris makes a great rhetorical point there. The state of Israel, like any other state, Abneri told me, cannot tolerate having its citizens shelled, bombed, or rocketed. But there has been no thought as to how to solve the problem through political means or to analyze where this phenomenon has come from. What has caused it? Israelis as a whole cannot put themselves in the shoes of others. We are too self centered. We cannot stand in the shoes of Palestinians or Arabs to ask how we would react in the same situation. Sometimes, very rarely, it happens. Years ago, when Ehud Barak was asked how he would behave if he were a Palestinian, he said, "I would join a terrorist organization." If you do not understand Hamas, if you do not understand why Hamas does what it does, if you don't understand Palestinians, you take recourse in brute force. And this is a theme that we see in science fiction literature as well. If I don't understand something, if I don't understand an object, it must be a weapon. And then I react accordingly, and the consequences follow. In September 2000, France 2 TV captured dramatic footage of a father unsuccessfully trying to shield his traumatized 12-year-old son, Mohammed al-Dura, from Israeli gunfire at the Netzarim junction in the Gaza Strip. This is a very famous video from the Second Intifada. You can find it online. The killing of the boy resulted in a typical propaganda campaign by Israel. Israeli officials spent years lying about the killing, first blaming the Palestinians for the shooting, later suggesting that the scene was faked, and finally insisting the boy was still alive. When an Israeli soldier in 2003 murdered the 23-year-old American student and activist Rachel Corrie by crushing her to death with an armored military bulldozer as she tried to prevent the illegal demolition of a Palestinian doctor's home, the Israeli army said it was an accident for which Corrie was responsible. Israel made the same claim of targeted assassination as accident when an Israeli sniper shot dead the American-Turkish activist Aysenur Ezgi Egi on September the 6th, 2024. She had joined other activists to protest the theft of Palestinian farmland by Israeli colonists in the West Bank town of Beita, near Nablus. The White House, refusing to ascribe blame, called on Israel to investigate. Rachel Corrie's father Craig, commenting on the murder of the 26-year-old activist and yet another purported Israeli investigation, said acidly, "Israel does not do investigations. They do cover-ups." Excellent line from Rachel Corrie's dad. I'll be using that in the future. Now, if you have watched the channel, I did a report. I read out major excerpts of BTselem's report on the prison situation during this particular time. The prison situation has always been bad in the West Bank and other parts of the Palestinian territories, but it's obviously ratcheted up during this latest cycle of violence. So I've read lots of accounts. I'll put a link in the description as well as a card if you want to hear a much longer detailed account. But Chris has an account here which I want to read for you, and this is from Fadi Baker, a 25-year-old lawyer specializing in human rights from the Tel Al Hawa neighborhood in Gaza City. He gave this account over the phone of the torture he received to BTselem on June the 23rd, 2024. On January the 5th, 2024, while out searching for flour to feed his family, Baker explains, Israeli soldiers shot him in the leg and lower abdomen. Hours later, other Israeli soldiers found him. They stripped me naked and took the gold jewelry, my money, and my phone. Another soldier came and handed me a phone. I talked to someone who asked me in Arabic which tunnel I'd come out of. I told him I was a civilian and hadn't come out of any tunnel. Then he told me he would meet me and suggested I don't talk to the soldiers in the meantime because they would kill me. He was beaten and later told to put on white see-through clothes. Baker was robbed of his belongings and tortured. He was taken to Sde Teman detention facility where Israelis wearing medical and military uniforms cauterized his wounds without anesthetic. He was photographed. His belongings were taken from him. He was later forced into something that looked like an animal pen. He was forced to kneel, kept blindfolded and handcuffed, and not permitted to sleep. 5 days later, he was taken to a very cold room, stripped naked, and left for 4 days while loud music was blasted into the room day and night. He goes on. After 4 days, they took me for interrogation, which was based on beatings and torture. They put cigarettes out in my mouth and on my body. They put clamps on my testicles that were attached to something heavy. It went on like that for a whole day. My testicles swelled up and my left ear bled. I was asked about Hamas leaders and people I didn't know and hadn't met. They asked me where I was on October 7th, and I said I was at home and had only gone out to get food for my wife. They beat me. Then they put me back in the freezing room with the loud disco music, and again left me there naked for 2 days, and gave me only very little bread and water. Then they took me into interrogation again. They opened WhatsApp on my phone and asked me about neighbors from my building and where they worked. I told them that some of them worked at UNRWA or the Red Cross, or some I didn't know. From there, they took me to a different pen, where they left me naked for about 4 or 5 days. I got very little food and drink there too, and they made me wear a diaper. After that, I was taken into interrogation again. I was asked about my work and about car dealers I have business connections with. During the interrogation, they showed me a video and told me they were Islamic Jihad people. I told them I didn't know them. During the interrogation, I was given electric shocks and beaten so badly that I passed out. My foot got swollen from the electric shocks. When I came to, I asked them to bandage it, and they did. The interrogation continued, and then they took me to the room with the disco music and left me there for 3 days. When I asked the soldier guarding me to go to the bathroom, he brought me a container and told me to pee into it. I developed wounds, bleeding and pain in my body, especially the left leg, which had bruises and wounds full of pus that hurt badly. My leg turned blue and nearly reached a state of necrosis. I was kept in the pen for 5 days, and then I had surgery without anesthesia on my swollen left leg. I asked for anesthetics, and they said I wasn't in a position to ask for anything and ordered me to keep quiet. When I screamed in pain, they hit me in the abdomen with a plastic stick until I shut up. They drained the pus from my leg. Then they moved me back to the pen, where I was forced to kneel every day for 2 weeks, handcuffed and blindfolded. We got food 3 times a day: cheese, jam, tuna, and 4 slices of bread. The bandage on my leg was changed only once. We showered once a week, and got clean underwear only once during that entire time. I was offered to work with the army and refused. One of the officers or soldiers conveyed condolences for the death of my father and mother, my family, and my wife. That's when I had a nervous breakdown and I passed out. On February the 25th, 2024, at 3 a.m., Baker was put on a bus with other detainees and driven to the Karam Abu Salam crossing into Gaza. He and the other detainees were told by the soldiers they were forbidden to speak to the media about what they had endured. I mean, honestly, you can't make it up. They gave us a bag with our personal effects, but I didn't find the money, the gold jewelry, or my phone in mine. He said, I only found the phone charger, my UNRWA refugee card, and my ID card. I told the soldier I wanted my things, and he said I had nothing, and that if I spoke about it, I would go back to prison. He has a phone charger, but no phone. I mean, these people, they are stealing from prisoners. And remember that they're the most moral army in the world. But they steal from prisoners who they torture and beat. So here are some final reflections, and I'll share whether I agree or disagree with Chris's assessment. Obviously, deferring to the fact that Chris is far more experienced about this. Chris has forgotten more about this issue than I'll ever know. And yet, I think in some ways, he might be being too hopeful, too idealistic. By the time Israel achieves its decimation of Gaza, it will have signed its own death sentence. Its facade of civility, its supposed vaunted respect for the rule of law and democracy, its mythical story of the courageous Israeli military and miraculous birth of the Jewish nation, which it successfully sold to its Western audiences, will lie in heaps of ash. Israel's social capital will be spent. It will be revealed as the ugly, repressive, hate-filled apartheid regime it always has been, alienating younger generations of American Jews. Its patron, the United States, as new generations come into power, will distance itself from Israel. Its popular support will come from reactionary Zionists and America's Christianized fascists, who see Israel's domination of ancient biblical lands as a harbinger of the Second Coming, and its subjugation of Arabs as a kindred racism and celebration of white supremacy. I think, as I say, Chris is being a bit optimistic here because after all of these months, you still see people like Piers Morgan, Douglas Murray carrying water for the Israelis, still talking about how they're defending themselves and Israel has a right to defend itself, and murdering children and women is Israel defending itself. We still see this. So when Chris is saying that, once this is over, Israel's social capital will be spent, it will be revealed. It People who needed to be woken up have woken up over the past 18 to 24 months. If you haven't woken up during that time period, you're not interested or you believe the Hasbara. Like nothing will work on you if the last 18 months hasn't worked on you. So I feel Chris is being slightly optimistic here in the changes that will happen. I don't think Israel will be so set aside. I'm happy to be proven wrong. I would love to be proven wrong. But I just think it's more status quo. Israel will continue to do whatever it wants until a major change happens. But I don't see that major change happening anytime soon. Young men and women sign up for the military for many reasons, but starving, bombing, and killing women and children is usually not among them. Shouldn't, in a just world, the U.S. fleet break the Israeli blockade of Gaza to provide food, shelter, and medicine? Shouldn't U.S. warplanes impose a no-fly zone over Gaza to halt the saturation bombing? Shouldn't Israel be issued an ultimatum to withdraw its forces from Gaza? Shouldn't the weapons shipments, billions in military aid, and intelligence provided to Israel be halted? Shouldn't those who commit genocide, as well as those who support genocide, be held accountable? All excellent questions. And I think Chris asks us to think about how the U.S. has reacted to other regimes. No-fly zones. We will do that in Serbia. We'll do that in Iraq, but we can't possibly do that there. And not to say that innocent women and children weren't also killed in those situations. Remember, the United States is responsible for at least 1 million dead Iraqis. But the idea that Palestine cannot receive any of these things. They can't receive food. They can't receive shelter. They can't receive medicine. They can't receive protection from genocidal Israeli pilots. That's a reflection on all of us. And I applaud Chris's work. I'm grateful for something that's so up to the minute. And as I say, history is being written in front of us. And I'm grateful to the people who are putting those first volumes of this period of history out. If you'd like to support this channel, an easy and free way you can do so is by hitting like, subscribe, share this with people who are interested in accounts of what's been happening recently. If you'd like to buy a copy of the book, that's another way you can support the channel. There's a link to that in the description below. If you want to thank me for this presentation, there's links to buy me a coffee and PayPal below. If you want to support me on an ongoing basis, there's links to Patreon as well as YouTube membership. It's a way that you can get access to these videos ahead of time, as well as get exclusive videos that I do not release to the public. If you'd like to nominate a book for the future, my Amazon wish list is below. You can navigate to there. You'll see all sorts of books, not only on Palestine, but books that probably have nothing to do with Palestine. That's for my Stephen Heiner channel. Whatever you choose to do, if you buy a copy of that book, send it to me. It'll put into my queue, and I will try to review it in a timely manner. A reminder that as we work towards monetization of this channel, the goal of which is to put all of the profits towards the Palestine Children's Relief Fund, which helps Palestinian children get medical care that they couldn't otherwise get. We still need to get to monetization, which means we need to accrue a certain number of watch hours. So if you are interested in helping us get monetized and helping us support the PCRF on an ongoing basis, and if you don't know about the PCRF, there's a link to them in the description below. Go check out their work. Feel free to support them directly. Don't wait for our channel to get monetized to support them. But what you can do to help us do that is to watch as many of these videos as you can. That builds up our watch hour count and then tips us over into being eligible for monetization. Until next time, enjoy your reading.